The crystal wine glass felt like it might shatter in my grip as Franklin Whitmore III raised his perfectly manicured hand and pointed directly at my chest. Let me be crystal clear, Tyler. You will never see a single penny from this family, not one red cent. The entire dining room at the Whitmore estate fell silent except for the soft crackling of the fireplace. Madison, my wife of 3 years, sat frozen beside me, her fork hovering halfway to her mouth. Her mother Eleanor gasped softly, pressing her hand to her pearl necklace like she was clutching her heart. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Dad, please, Madison whispered, but there was no real conviction in her voice, no fire, no defense of her husband. Franklin's cold blue eyes never left mine. You married into this family thinking you'd hit the lottery, didn't you? A working-class financial analyst from the wrong side of town, thinking you could coast on our success. I set down my wine glass with deliberate care, the sound echoing in the cavernous room. The Whitmore dining room was bigger than my entire childhood apartment, complete with oil paintings of late relatives and enough silverware to feed a small army. Everything about this place screamed old money, from the hand-carved mahogany table to the imported Italian marble floors. Actually, Franklin, I said, keeping my voice steady, I married Madison because I love her. The money never mattered to me. He laughed, a harsh sound that bounced off the vaulted ceiling. Oh, how noble, how romantic. But love doesn't pay for law school, does it? Love doesn't buy the downtown condo you two have been eyeing, or that BMW Madison drives. Madison's face flushed red. Tyler works hard. He's a good man. A good man? Franklin stood up, his 6-foot frame casting a shadow across the table. A good man doesn't let his wife's family foot the bill for everything while he plays with spreadsheets at some second-rate investment firm. The words hit like physical blows. Sure, Whitmore Industries had helped with Madison's law school tuition. Yes, they'd given us the BMW as a wedding gift. But I'd never asked for any of it. I'd actually argued against accepting their help, knowing strings would be attached. I never asked you for anything, I said, my jaw clenching. No, but you sure as hell took it, didn't you? Franklin's voice rose. The tuition payments, the car, the credit cards we co-signed, the country club membership. You've been living off Whitmore money since the day you married my daughter. Eleanor finally found her voice. Franklin, dear, perhaps we should discuss this privately. No. He slammed his palm on the table, making the china rattle. It's time Tyler understood his place in this family, which is nowhere. Madison reached for my hand under the table, but her touch felt cold, distant. Tyler, maybe we should go. I looked at my wife, really looked at her, the woman I'd fallen in love with during her first year of law school when she was still hungry and driven and didn't care that I shopped at Target instead of Nordstrom. When had she changed? When had she started looking at me the way her father did now, like I was something unpleasant stuck to the bottom of her shoe? You know what, Franklin? I stood up slowly, matching his height. You're absolutely right about one thing. I don't belong in this family. His eyebrows shot up, clearly not expecting agreement. But not for the reasons you think. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, turning the screen toward him. See this? That's my savings account. $47,000. Every penny I've earned myself, working 60-hour weeks while your daughter studied for her bar exam. Franklin glanced at the screen, his expression faltering slightly. And this, I swiped to another screen, is the down payment I was planning to make on our condo, without asking you for a dime. Madison's eyes widened. Tyler, you never told me. Because I wanted to surprise you, because I wanted to prove I could provide for my wife without handouts from Daddy. I pocketed the phone and looked directly at Franklin. But you're right about one thing. I don't belong here. Not because I'm not good enough, but because you people are poison. The silence that followed was deafening. Eleanor's face had gone white, and Madison looked like she might cry. But Franklin's expression had shifted from smug superiority to something approaching uncertainty. Tyler, please, Madison said, her voice breaking. Let's just go home and talk about this. Home? Our little apartment downtown that I paid for with my own money. The place where we'd been happy before her family's influence started seeping into every corner of our marriage like toxic gas. No, Madison, I think your father has made his position very clear. I turned back to Franklin, who was still standing but no longer looked quite so commanding. You want to know what I think? I think you're terrified that your daughter might actually be happy with someone who didn't inherit his success. Someone who might show her there's more to life than trust funds and country clubs. How dare you? I dare because I have nothing left to lose. The words came out harder than I intended, but I was past caring. You've made it clear I'm not welcome in this family, so consider this my resignation." I walked around the table toward the door, but Franklin's voice stopped me. "If you walk out that door, Tyler, don't expect to come crawling back when reality hits, when you realize you can't afford to keep my daughter in the lifestyle she deserves." I turned back one last time, looking at Madison's tear-streaked face, at Eleanor's shocked expression, at Franklin's cold smirk that had returned full force. The lifestyle she deserves? I almost laughed. You mean the lifestyle where she's treated like a pretty ornament instead of a brilliant woman? Where her worth is measured by her husband's bank account instead of her own achievements? You're right, Franklin. I can't give her that lifestyle. Thank God. The front door of the Whitmore mansion was solid oak, probably worth more than my car. It closed behind me with a satisfying thud that seemed to echo through the October night. As I walked down the circular driveway toward my modest Honda Civic parked between a Mercedes and a Lexus, like a middle finger to their automotive superiority, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Relief. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in Mick's gym, wrapping my hands for another session with the heavy bag. The old boxing gym smelled like sweat, leather, and decades of broken dreams, but it was the only place I could think clearly anymore. "You're going to wear that bag out if you keep hitting it like it owes you money," Mick called from behind the front desk. At 55, Mick Sullivan had the weathered face of a man who'd taken too many punches and the wisdom that came with surviving them all. He'd been my trainer back in college, before I traded boxing gloves for business suits. "Maybe it does owe me money," I muttered, throwing a combination that would have made my younger self proud. Madison and I hadn't spoken since that disaster at her parents' house. She'd texted a few times, asking me to call, saying we needed to talk, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. What was there to say? That I was sorry for standing up to her father? That I'd take back everything I said if it meant keeping the peace? Not happening. The gym door chimed, and I looked up to see Jake Morrison and Pete Chen walking in. My stomach dropped. Jake and Pete had been my closest friends since college, the guys I'd grabbed beers with every Friday for the past 5 years. But they were also Madison's friends now, part of the social circle that revolved around the Whitmore family's influence. "Tyler, man," Jake said, approaching cautiously like I might bolt. "We need to talk." I kept punching the bag. "About what?" Pete shifted uncomfortably. "About what happened at the Whitmores. Madison's really upset." "Madison's upset?" I stopped punching and turned to face them. "That's interesting. She didn't seem too upset when her father was tearing me apart." "Come on, dude," Jake said. "You know how Franklin is. He's old school, protective of his family. But walking out like that was harsh." I stared at my two best friends, trying to process what I was hearing. "Harsh? You think I was harsh?" "Madison's been crying for weeks," Pete added. "She loves you, Tyler, but you embarrassed her entire family." The words hit me like a physical blow. These were supposed to be my friends, the guys who had my back no matter what. But here they were, taking the Whitmore's side. "Let me get this straight," I said, unwrapping my hands slowly. "Franklin Whitmore spends an entire dinner telling me I'm worthless, that I'm a gold digger, that I'll never amount to anything, and I'm the bad guy for defending myself." Jake and Pete exchanged a look that told me everything I needed to know. They'd already made up their minds before walking in here. "Look, Tyler," Jake said, "we get that you were angry, but Franklin's not wrong about some things. You have been living pretty well off their money." The betrayal was so complete, so unexpected, that for a moment I couldn't speak. These were the guys who knew my story, who knew I'd worked 2 jobs to put myself through college, who knew I'd never asked the Whitmores for anything. "Get out," I said quietly. "Tyler, don't be like this," Pete said. "We're trying to help." "Help?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're here to convince me to apologize to Franklin Whitmore for having the audacity to defend myself in his own house. That's not help. That's betrayal." Jake's face hardened. "You know what, Tyler? Maybe Franklin was right. Maybe you have changed since you married into that family. The Tyler I knew wouldn't have been so proud that he'd throw away his marriage over his ego." "My ego?" I stepped closer to Jake, and he actually took a step back. "You want to know what this is really about? It's about the fact that Franklin Whitmore owns half this town, including the law firm where you work, Pete. And Jake, wasn't it Franklin who recommended you for that promotion at the bank?" The silence that followed confirmed everything. My best friends weren't here out of loyalty to me or even to Madison. They were here because Franklin Whitmore had sent them. "It's not like that," Pete said weakly. "Isn't it?" I grabbed my gym bag from the floor. "Tell me something, guys. When Franklin suggested you come talk to me, did he mention that your jobs might depend on how successful you were?" Neither of them answered, which was answer enough. That's what I thought. I slung the bag over my shoulder. You know what the funny thing is? I actually thought you were my friends. Real friends. The kind who'd have your back when some rich asshole tried to humiliate you. Tyler, come on, Jake said. Don't make this bigger than it is. Bigger than it is? I stopped at the door and turned back. My wife's father just bought my two best friends, and you think I'm making it bigger than it is? Mick had been pretending not to listen from behind his desk, but now he stood up. Maybe you boys should leave, he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd broken up a lot of fights in his time. Jake and Pete looked at each other, then back at me. This isn't over, Tyler, Jake said. Madison deserves better than this. After they left, I sat down heavily on a nearby bench. The gym was empty except for Mick and me, the afternoon sun streaming through dirty windows and illuminating dust motes that danced in the air like tiny ghosts. Friends like that, Mick said, walking over with 2 bottles of water. You're better off without. I accepted the water gratefully. I've known them for 10 years, Mick. 10 years. Money changes people, he said, settling onto the bench beside me. Sometimes it changes the people who have it, sometimes it changes the people who want it. Either way, it shows you who people really are. My phone buzzed with a text message. Madison again. Tyler, please call me. We need to talk. I love you. I showed Mick the message. He read it and shook his head. What do you think? I asked. I think, Mick said slowly, that if she loved you enough, she would have stood up for you in that dining room. Instead of letting her daddy tear you down, she would have told him to stop. He was right, and I'd known it from the moment I walked out of the Whitmore mansion. Madison had sat there in silence while her father eviscerated me. She'd watched her husband get humiliated and done nothing. So, what do I do? Mick stood up and walked back toward his desk. That's up to you, kid. But if you want my advice, don't go crawling back. You showed them who you really are that night. Now they're showing you who they really are. I sat in that gym for another hour, thinking about everything that had happened, about the woman I'd married and the woman she'd become, about the friends I'd thought I could count on and the reality of their loyalty, about Franklin Whitmore and his casual cruelty, his absolute certainty that money could buy anything, including people. By the time I left, I'd made a decision. Not about whether to call Madison back. That was still too complicated, too painful to think about clearly. But about Jake and Pete, about Franklin Whitmore, about the whole toxic web of relationships that had somehow become my life. I was done being the victim. The confrontation happened at Murphy's Bar on a rainy Thursday night in November. I'd been avoiding the place for weeks because I knew Jake and Pete hung out there, but I was tired of letting them dictate where I could go in my own city. I was nursing my second beer at the bar when they walked in with a group I recognized from Madison's law school crowd. The laughter faded when they saw me, and I watched in the mirror behind the bar as they huddled together, clearly debating whether to stay or leave. They decided to stay. Within 10 minutes, Jake appeared at my elbow, ordering a drink like we were still buddies. Hey, Tyler, how have you been? I didn't look at him. Peachy. Look, man, I know things got heated at the gym, but we're still friends, right? We've been through too much together to let this come between us. Now I did turn to look at him. Jake Morrison had been the best man at my wedding. The guy who'd helped me move apartments 4 times, who'd loaned me money when I was between jobs. But looking at him now, all I could see was Franklin Whitmore's puppet. Are we friends, Jake? Because friends don't usually try to manipulate each other on behalf of their boss? Jake's face flushed. That's not what happened. No? Then tell me this wasn't Franklin's idea. Before Jake could answer, Pete appeared on my other side. The whole group was watching us now, and I could feel the tension ratcheting up with each passing second. Tyler, you're being paranoid, Pete said. Nobody sent us to talk to you. We're worried about you, man. You're throwing your life away over pride. My life? I laughed and took a long pull from my beer. You mean the life where my wife sits quietly while her father humiliates me? The life where my best friends choose their careers over their loyalty? That life? Madison loves you, Jake said. She's been miserable since you left. If she loves me so much, where is she? Why isn't she here fighting for our marriage instead of sending you two? The question hung in the air like smoke. Around us, the normal bar noise continued. Pool balls clacking, the jukebox playing some country song about heartbreak, people laughing and talking, but our little corner had become an island of tension. She's scared, Tyler, Pete said finally, scared that you'll reject her like you rejected her family. I didn't reject her family. I stood up to a bully who happens to be her father. Franklin's not a bully, Jake said, his voice getting louder. He's a successful businessman who's protective of his daughter. Maybe if you'd shown him some respect instead of acting like a victim. Respect? I set my beer down hard enough that foam sloshed over the rim. You want to talk about respect? Let me tell you about respect, Jake. I stood up and turned to face both of them, and I could see people at nearby tables starting to pay attention to our conversation. Respect is not ambushing someone at a family dinner. Respect is not telling your daughter's husband that he's worthless in front of the whole family. Respect is not using your money and influence to turn his friends against him. Nobody turned us against you, Pete said, but his voice lacked conviction. Really? So it's just a coincidence that you both suddenly think Franklin Whitmore is a great guy? It's just a coincidence that you're here trying to convince me to apologize to him? Jake stepped closer, and I could smell the alcohol on his breath. He'd been drinking before they arrived. You know what, Tyler? Maybe Franklin was right about you. Maybe you are just a working-class nobody who got lucky when Madison fell for you. The words hit like a slap, not because they hurt, but because they revealed everything. This was what Jake really thought of me, what he'd always thought. The friendship, the loyalty, the brotherhood. It had all been an act. There it is, I said quietly. The truth finally comes out. Pete tried to play peacemaker. Jake, come on, you don't mean that. Don't I? Jake was on a roll now, fueled by alcohol and whatever poison Franklin Whitmore had been whispering in his ear. Look at him, Pete. Look at where we are. He's drinking alone in a dive bar instead of fighting for his marriage because he's too proud to admit he was wrong. Wrong about what? I asked. Wrong about Franklin. Wrong about Madison. Wrong about everything. Jake poked me in the chest with his finger. You had it made, Tyler. Beautiful wife, rich family, unlimited opportunities, and you threw it all away because you couldn't handle being told the truth about yourself. The finger poke was a mistake. I grabbed Jake's wrist and twisted just enough to get his attention. Don't touch me. Jake tried to pull away, but I held on. Around us, the bar had gotten quieter as people sensed trouble brewing. Let go of me, Tyler. Not until you listen to what I have to say. I kept my voice low, controlled, but I could feel the anger burning in my chest like acid. You want to know the truth? The truth is that Franklin Whitmore owns you, both of you. He snaps his fingers and you come running. He tells you to betray your friend, and you do it without question. That's not... The truth is that you're both so desperate to stay in his good graces that you'll throw away 10 years of friendship without a second thought. The truth is that you're cowards. Pete stepped forward. Tyler, let him go. People are watching. I looked around and saw that he was right. Half the bar was staring at us now, and the bartender was reaching for the phone, probably to call the police. I released Jake's wrist and stepped back. You're right, Pete. People are watching. They're watching you choose money over friendship. They're watching you sell out someone who would have taken a bullet for you. Jake rubbed his wrist, his face red with anger and embarrassment. You're crazy, Tyler. You're actually crazy. Maybe I am, but at least I'm not for sale. That's when Jake threw the punch. It was a sloppy, drunken swing that I saw coming from a mile away. I ducked easily, and Jake's momentum carried him into a table behind me, sending drinks flying and earning shouts of protest from the people sitting there. The bartender was definitely calling the police now, and I could see people pulling out their phones to record what was happening. This was about to become a very public disaster. Jake struggled to his feet, his shirt soaked with spilled beer and his face twisted with rage. You think you're better than us? You think you're better than everyone? I think I'm better than you, I said, and the words came out colder than I intended. Right now, in this moment, I am absolutely better than you. Pete grabbed Jake's arm, trying to hold him back. Jake, stop. This isn't worth it. But Jake was beyond reason. He shook Pete off and came at me again, this time with more control. I sidestepped and pushed him past me, using his own momentum to send him crashing into the bar. Fight! Fight! Someone yelled, and suddenly the whole place was in chaos. People were shouting, chairs were scraping, and I could hear sirens in the distance. I looked at Pete, who was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. This is what you wanted, right? You wanted me to lose control, to prove that I'm the problem? Pete shook his head. Tyler, this isn't what anyone wanted. Isn't it? I grabbed my jacket from the bar stool. You came here to push me, to make me feel like I was the one who was wrong. Well, congratulations. You got your reaction. Jake was being helped to his feet by the bartender, red liquid trickling from a cut on his forehead where he'd hit the bar. He looked at me with pure hatred. This isn't over, Tyler. I walked toward the door, but turned back one last time. Yes, it is. We're done, Jake. All of us. You made your choice. The police were pulling up outside as I left through the back exit. I could hear them entering the bar, could imagine Jake and Pete explaining how their crazy friend had attacked them for no reason. By tomorrow, the story would be all over town. Tyler Hoffman, the unstable husband who couldn't handle his wife's success, who attacked his best friends in a jealous rage. Franklin Whitmore would love it. As I walked through the rain toward my car, I realized something had fundamentally changed inside me. The Tyler who had walked into that bar still believed in friendship, still hoped that people would do the right thing when it mattered. That Tyler was gone. The video hit social media 3 days later. Someone at Murphy's bar had recorded the whole confrontation on their phone, and by Sunday morning it was everywhere. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Everywhere I looked, there was Tyler Hoffman losing his mind and attacking his friends. Except that's not what the video showed. I watched it 17 times, studying every frame, every angle. The video clearly showed Jake throwing the first punch, clearly showed me defending myself, clearly showed that I never laid a hand on either of them. But somehow, the narrative had already been written. Local man attacks friends in bar brawl, read the headline in the city paper's online edition. The article, written by someone who obviously hadn't watched the video very carefully, painted me as an unstable husband who had violently confronted his friends when they tried to help him reconcile with his wife. My phone had been ringing nonstop since the video went viral. Reporters, friends of friends, people I barely knew, everyone wanted to hear my side of the story. I ignored them all except for one call. Madison. Tyler, what the hell happened? Her voice was shaky, like she'd been crying. Jake's in the hospital with a concussion. Pete says you went crazy, that you attacked them for no reason. I was sitting in my apartment, staring out the window at the gray November sky. Did you watch the video, Madison? What video? The video of what actually happened. The one that shows Jake throwing the first punch. The one that shows me defending myself. Silence on the other end of the line. You didn't watch it, I said. It wasn't a question. Tyler, I don't need to watch a video to know that this has gone too far. You put Jake in the hospital. Jake put Jake in the hospital. He threw a punch at me and missed. He fell into a table, then into the bar. I never touched him. That's not what Pete says. Pete wasn't exactly a neutral observer, was he? Another silence, longer this time. Tyler, I think you need help. Professional help. This isn't like you. I almost laughed. After everything that had happened, after her father's humiliation, after her friend's betrayal, after being attacked in a bar, she thought I was the one who needed help. You're right, Madison. This isn't like me. The old me would have apologized to your father. The old me would have let Jake and Pete manipulate me into crawling back. The old me would have accepted being treated like garbage because I was so afraid of losing you. Tyler, but you know what? Maybe losing you isn't the worst thing that could happen to me. Maybe the worst thing would be staying married to someone who doesn't respect me enough to watch a video before deciding I'm guilty. That's not fair. Fair? Now I did laugh, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been you defending me when your father tore me apart. Fair would have been you telling Jake and Pete to mind their own business instead of sending them to manipulate me. Fair would have been you watching the video before calling me to blame me for what happened. I could hear her crying now, soft sobs that once would have broken my heart. But something had hardened inside me over the past few weeks, something that her tears couldn't touch. I love you, Tyler. I've always loved you. No, Madison. You love the idea of me. You love the Tyler who makes you feel good about yourself, who doesn't cause problems, who fits quietly into your family's world. But you don't love the real me. The real me is too inconvenient. That's not true, isn't it? Tell me something, Madison. In the 3 weeks since I walked out of your parents' house, how many times have you stood up for me? How many times have you told your father he was wrong? How many times have you defended me to Jake and Pete? The silence told me everything I needed to know. I thought so, I said quietly. Tyler, please, let's meet somewhere and talk about this. We can work through this. Can we? Because I don't think we can work through the fact that you don't respect me. I don't think we can work through the fact that your family's money is more important to you than your husband's dignity. Money has nothing to do with this. Money has everything to do with this. The words came out louder than I intended, and I had to take a deep breath to calm down. Your father made it about money when he told me I'd never see a penny from your family. Jake and Pete made it about money when they chose their careers over our friendship. You made it about money when you chose your family's approval over your husband's feelings? Tyler, you're scaring me. Good. Maybe you should be scared. Maybe you should be scared that actions have consequences. Maybe you should be scared that treating people like garbage eventually catches up with you. I hung up before she could respond. An hour later, my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Mr. Hoffman, this is Franklin Whitmore. We need to talk. Meet me at my office tomorrow at 10 a.m. Don't make me ask twice. I stared at the message for a long time, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. Franklin Whitmore wanted to meet, probably to offer me money to disappear from his daughter's life, or maybe to threaten me with legal action over the bar fight. Either way, he thought he held all the cards. He was wrong. I typed back, "See you at 10." Then I opened my laptop and started researching Franklin Whitmore III and Whitmore Industries. If he wanted to play games, I was going to make sure I knew the rules. What I found in the next 6 hours changed everything. Franklin Whitmore's office occupied the entire top floor of the Whitmore Industries building downtown, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a commanding view of the city. When I walked in at exactly 10 a.m., he was standing with his back to me, looking out at his domain like a king surveying his kingdom. "Punctual," he said without turning around. I appreciate that in a man. The office was exactly what I'd expected. Leather furniture, expensive art, a desk the size of a small car. Everything designed to intimidate, to remind visitors of their place in the hierarchy. "You wanted to see me," I said, remaining standing near the door. He turned around slowly, and I was surprised to see that he looked older than he had at the dinner party. Tired. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his usually perfect silver hair looked slightly disheveled. "Sit down, Tyler." "I'm fine standing." He studied me for a moment, then walked to his desk and sat down. "You've caused quite a stir, haven't you? The bar fight, the video, the media attention. Madison's been beside herself." Madison could have avoided all of this by standing up for her husband when it mattered. Franklin leaned back in his chair. "You blame her for my actions?" "I blame her for her inaction." "Fair enough." He opened a desk drawer and pulled out a checkbook. "Let's cut to the chase, Tyler. How much will it take?" "How much will what take?" "For you to disappear. Clean divorce, no alimony, no claims on any assets. You walk away, start fresh somewhere else, and leave my daughter alone." I had to admire his directness. No pretense, no games, just straight to the bribe. "That's an interesting offer," I said. "What makes you think I'm for sale?" "Yeah, everyone's for sale, Tyler. It's just a matter of price." I walked closer to his desk, close enough to see the surprise in his eyes when I smiled. "You're right, Franklin. Everyone is for sale. Even you." His eyebrows shot up. Excuse me?" I pulled out my phone and opened the folder I'd created last night, filled with screenshots and documents I'd spent hours collecting. Whitmore Industries has been having some financial difficulties lately, hasn't it? The Riverside Development Project is 3 months behind schedule and $2 million over budget. The city contract for the new municipal building is under investigation for bid irregularities. And then there's the small matter of the EPA violations at your chemical plant in Millfield. Franklin's face had gone pale. "How did you—" "I'm a financial analyst, Franklin. It's what I do. I analyze finances. And your finances are very interesting reading." I set my phone on his desk, showing him a spreadsheet I'd created. "According to my calculations, Whitmore Industries is about 6 months away from a cash flow crisis. You've been borrowing against future projects to pay current expenses, and the whole house of cards is about to come tumbling down." "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I? Let's see. The loan payment on the Riverside project is due next month. $15 million. The EPA fine for the Millfield violations could be as much as $20 million. The city is threatening to pull the municipal building contract, which would cost you another $10 million in penalties." Franklin stood up abruptly. "Get out of my office." "I'm not finished." I picked up my phone and swiped to another screen. "This is where it gets really interesting. You see, I've been doing some digging into your personal finances too. The country estate, mortgage to the hilt, the yacht, borrowed against. Even Madison's law school tuition was paid with a loan against your life insurance policy." "You have no right." "I have every right. You made this personal when you humiliated me in front of your family. You made it personal when you turned my friends against me. You made it personal when you tried to destroy my marriage." I put the phone back in my pocket and looked directly into his eyes. "Here's what's going to happen, Franklin. You're going to call Madison and tell her that you were wrong about me. You're going to apologize for the things you said at dinner. You're going to welcome me back into the family with open arms." "Like hell I will." "Or," I continued as if he hadn't spoken, "I'm going to take everything I've learned about Whitmore Industries to the SEC, the EPA, and the city attorney's office. I'm going to make sure every reporter in the state knows that the great Franklin Whitmore III is broke, desperate, and possibly criminal." Franklin's hands were shaking now. Whether from rage or fear, I couldn't tell. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" I pulled out a business card and placed it on his desk. "That's the direct number for investigative reporter Sarah Chen at Channel 7 News. I've already spoken with her about doing a story on corruption in city contracting. She's very interested. Franklin stared at the card like it might bite him. You have until tomorrow at noon to make your choice, I said, walking toward the door. Call Madison and apologize or watch your empire crumble on the evening news. Tyler, wait. I stopped but didn't turn around. You think you've won something here? You think this changes anything? Now I did turn around, and I let him see the complete absence of warmth in my eyes. I think I've learned something important about power, Franklin. Real power isn't having money. Real power is knowing where the bodies are buried. I left him standing there in his expensive office, surrounded by the trappings of wealth that were all built on borrowed time and borrowed money. My phone rang as I was walking to my car. Madison. Tyler, my father just called. He wants to have dinner tonight, all of us. He says he wants to apologize. Does he now? Tyler, what did you do? He sounded different, scared almost. I got into my car and started the engine. I just reminded him that respect is a two-way street. I don't understand. You will. See you at dinner, Madison? As I drove away from the Whitmore Industries building, I thought about the man I'd been 6 months ago, that Tyler would have been horrified by what I'd just done. That Tyler believed in playing fair, in taking the high road, in being the bigger person, but that Tyler had gotten his heart broken and his dignity trampled, that Tyler had been betrayed by his wife, his friends, and his father-in-law. This Tyler was different. This Tyler understood that sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. The dinner that night was everything I could have hoped for. Franklin Whitmore III, one of the most powerful men in the city, apologized to me in front of his entire family. He welcomed me back, praised my intelligence and work ethic, and even offered me a position at Whitmore Industries. Madison cried tears of joy. Eleanor beamed like the perfect hostess, and Franklin smiled the whole time, even though his eyes promised that this wasn't over. But I knew something he didn't. It was over. I'd won. Jake Morrison was fired from his job at the bank the next week for performance issues. Pete Chen found himself under investigation by the State Bar Association for ethics violations. Both of them tried to call me, to apologize, to make amends. I didn't take their calls. Madison and I reconciled, of course. We moved into the downtown condo, had a second wedding ceremony, and started talking about children. She never asked me what I'd said to her father, and I never told her. But sometimes, late at night, I'd catch her looking at me with something that might have been fear. Like she was seeing me clearly for the first time and wasn't sure she liked what she saw. She was right to be afraid. The old Tyler had loved her unconditionally, had been willing to forgive anything, had put her happiness above his own dignity. The new Tyler loved her too, but with conditions, with boundaries, with the absolute certainty that if she ever betrayed me again, the consequences would be swift and devastating. Franklin Whitmore learned that lesson the hard way. Jake and Pete learned it too. Madison never had to learn it, because she was smart enough to see what happened to the people who crossed me.